All right, let's talk about something that so many of us go through every single year: allergies. We're going to dive into what's actually happening in your body, and we'll meet the tiny little heroes that help us fight back.
I mean, it's a totally fair question, right? One minute you're enjoying a beautiful day, the next, you're a mess. How can this tiny, harmless speck of pollen launch a full-blown attack on your system? Well, that's exactly what we're going to unpack. Oh yeah, we all know the signs. The itchy eyes, the sneezes that just don't stop, the runny nose, that maddening everywhere itch. It's just miserable. But believe it or not, it's all caused by one key chemical in your body that's just going completely haywire. Okay, let's get into it.
So let's meet the main character in this whole drama: histamine. The best way to think about it is like your body's own security guard. You know, most of the time it's doing a great job, but when an allergen shows up, it gets a little overzealous. It sounds this massive, totally unnecessary alarm.
So what is this stuff really? Well, scientifically, it's a biogenic amine, which is just a fancy way of saying tissue amine. It's made from an amino acid called histidine, and it basically acts as a super important chemical messenger. It gets stored in these special cells, like mast cells, just waiting for the signal to be released.
Now, what's really interesting is that histamine isn't some villain. It actually has a crucial day job. It helps keep you awake and alert, it manages your stomach acid, and it even works as a neurotransmitter in your brain. But when an allergen comes along, it takes on this nightmare gig, causing all the chaos and inflammation we know and hate.
So how exactly do we connect the dots? How do we go from that bit of pollen to a full-on physical meltdown? How does histamine actually pull this off? Well, it all happens in a really fast, four-step chain reaction.
Okay, so here's how it goes down. First, the allergen, pollen, dust, whatever, gets into your body. Your immune system has already made a mistake and flagged it as a threat, creating these special antibodies called IgE. Now, these IgE antibodies are just sitting on your mast cells, waiting. The next time that pollen shows up, the antibodies sound the alarm, and that causes the mast cells to just burst open, releasing a huge flood of histamine. That histamine then rushes to find these special docking stations called H1 receptors, and that is when all the trouble starts.
So what happens the moment histamine locks onto those H1 receptors? Well, your blood vessels swell up and start to leak, which gives you that redness and swelling. The muscles in your airways tighten up, your nerve endings get totally irritated, and that's what causes that intense itch. And your glands, they go into overdrive, pumping out mucus. Every single one of your symptoms is a direct result of histamine hitting that one specific switch.
But here's the good news. We have a way to fight back. And this is where the heroes of our story, the antihistamines, finally make their entrance. They're designed to jump in and stop that very last crucial step of the allergic reaction.
So how do they actually work? They're what's known as competitive antagonists. Here's a great way to think about it. Imagine the H1 receptor is a nightclub, and histamine is this rowdy guest trying to get inside to cause a bunch of trouble. Well, an antihistamine is like the bouncer. It gets to the nightclub first and just stands right in the doorway, physically blocking histamine from ever getting in. It's not stopping the histamine from being released, not at all. It's just making sure it can't have any effect.
But here's the thing. Not all antihistamines are the same. They basically fall into two big groups or generations, and the difference between them is huge, and it completely changes how you feel when you take one.
Okay, so you have the first generation. These are the older ones, like diphenhydramine. They work great for allergies, but they have one major trait. They can easily cross from your bloodstream into your brain. It's called the blood-brain barrier, and once they're in your brain, they start blocking the other H1 receptors, the ones that help keep you awake. That's why they make you so drowsy. Now, the second generation, your loratadines and fexavenidines, were literally designed not to cross that barrier, so they can shut down your allergy symptoms without putting you to sleep. Plus, they last a lot longer. It's a real game changer.
And this difference isn't just some boring science fact. It's everything when it comes to picking the right medicine. It's all about choosing the right hero for the specific job you need them to do.
So let's make it simple. If you're fighting off allergies during the day and you need to drive or work or just, function, a second-generation non-drowsy one is the obvious choice. But that sleepy side effect from the older first-generation drugs, it can actually be useful. It's why they're often used to help people sleep or to prevent motion sickness. You're actually using that side effect to your advantage.
All right, let's do a quick recap. 1. Histamine is the bad guy in your allergy story, but it's a good guy in other parts of your body.
2. Antihistamines are like bouncers. They just block the door to the H1 receptors. 3. The newer second-generation ones are your go-to for daytime relief because they won't make you sleepy. And 4. The older, first-generation ones still have their place, especially if you want that drowsy effect. And that brings us to one final thought. Antihistamines are amazing at managing the symptoms, at making you feel better, but they only block that final step. They don't do anything to stop your immune system from overreacting in the first place. So the bigger question is, what would it really take to stop the allergy at its source? Definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining this explainer.